This morning, new texts reveal the involvement Utah Senator Mike Lee had in efforts to contest the results of the 2020 election.
John Franke has more on what we're learning about what happened shortly after President Biden was declared the winner.
Yeah, those messages are between Senator Mike Lee and then President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows. They begin on November 7th, just after the 2020 election, and last through January 4th, 2 days before the insurrection at the nation's capital. Now, on December 8th, according to those messages obtained by CNN, Senator Lee suggests that certain states could appoint alternate electoral college delegates contrary to the verified election results in those states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. He writes, quote, "If a very small handful of states were to have their legislatures appoint alternative slates of delegates, there could be a path." But on January 3rd, Lee expresses frustration with the president. This message says in part, "I don't think the president is grasping the distinction between what we can do and what he would like us to do." A message that follows reads, "Again, all this could change if the states in question certify Trump electors pursuant to state law. But in the absence of that, this effort is destined not only to fail, but to hurt DJT, Donald J. Trump, in the process." The next day, Trump said this of Senator Lee at a rally in Georgia.
And Mike Lee is here too, but I'm a little angry at him today. Where's Mike Lee? Where is he? I'm a little angry at you today, but that's all.
Lee then texts this to Mark Meadows. "I've been spending 14 hours a day for the last week trying to unravel this for him. To have him take a shot at me like that in such a public setting without even asking me about it is pretty discouraging." He adds, "It's not your fault, but I've been calling state legislators for hours today, and I'm going to spend hours doing the same tomorrow. I'm trying to figure out a path that I can persuasively defend, and this won't make it any easier." Of course, Senator Lee faces re-election this year.
The January 6th committee final report and interview transcripts spend time talking about two Utahns. Fox 13 investigative reporter Nate Carlisle tells us who and what they've said.
This is Utah Senator Mike Lee and Kaysville resident Janet Bueller. One, according to the January 6th committee, worked to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The other was convicted of a crime. Let's start with Lee.
There is absolutely nothing to the idea that I would have ever supported, ever did support a fake electors plot. Nothing.
The committee said it was more complicated than that. While Lee appeared to be unwilling to accept just anyone showing up claiming to be an elector for Trump, the final committee report says Senator Lee had spent a month encouraging the idea of having state legislatures endorse competing electors for Trump. Lee's spokesman today told Fox 13 News the senator was unavailable for an interview, but that Lee didn't encourage state legislatures to do anything. But Lee's own text messages, which have been reported on by CNN and others, says he was spending 14 hours a day contacting state legislators inquiring if they would send electors for Trump.
In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns with power and great glory, he will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful. Nonetheless, we are presently living in what surely is a most complicated time in the history of the world. The complexities and challenges leave many people feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. However, consider a recent experience that might shed light on how you and I can find rest. During the recent open house of the Washington, D.C. Temple,
There's absolutely nothing to the idea that I would have ever supported, ever did support a fake electors plot. Nothing.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says it supports the Respect for Marriage Act in the Senate, which includes amendments that protect religious freedom.
In the hope that we can come to a place where we respect each other, I have offered an amendment to this legislation that would explicitly minimize the threats to these religious organizations and individuals. I'm at the table. I'm willing to compromise. And in the spirit of compromise, I've publicly stated, and I reiterate here again today, that I will support the legislation if my amendment is adopted. My amendment simply prohibits the federal government from discriminating against schools, businesses, and organizations based on their religious beliefs about same-sex marriage. That's all it does. My amendment prevents the Internal Revenue Service, among other things, from revoking the tax-exempt status of these charities and organizations simply because they act according to their beliefs about the divine purpose of marriage. It prevents the Department of Education from targeting schools with honor codes based on the fact that they've got provisions in their honor codes based on religious beliefs. It protects individuals from being denied business licenses or grants or other statuses based on their views about marriage. It protects Americans who wish to act according to their religious beliefs from being forced to abandon their God-given mandates to love, serve, and care for the poor, the orphan, and the refugee. If we allow the government to threaten their ability to do so, then the religious liberty of every American is in peril. As I said, Madam President, we must be willing to compromise to protect the interests of all. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, which would assure that all Americans would have certain rights and that their religious beliefs and their moral convictions will be explicitly protected, and provide some comfort that Congress is not purposely passing laws that restrict the free exercise of religion.